and spatial GIS applications such as QGis. And they also do things like teaching other groups around the world. Now, quite some time ago, actually as far back as QGis version 1, they produced a booklet for the Eastern Cape province of Africa to teach their staff GIS practices. And I've been given permission to share this book with you lot. So we now all have a free copy of this. Now it's a little bit old, 2012 or 2009, basically, when Tim Sutton was still the guy in charge of OSGeo. But it's a really, really good, really basic guide overview to GIS, particularly GIS using QGis. Now, because it's a little bit out of date, some of the menus and things will be in different places, but most of what's in there is all really still useful information for anybody who's looking to use QGis to produce some maps. And because I've been given permission to dish it out, I've got permission, which is why I handed it to Richard earlier, to put it on our Facebook group for those who want to download and read it and use it as a guide to work with. So there you go, guys. Little bit of a belated Christmas present. I believe when OSGeo put this scheme together originally for Eastern Cape, they charged the Eastern Cape government a substantial amount of money to produce this booklet and the couple of months worth of training that they did for their staff. So it's not something that they're inclined to give away for no benefit. Right, so moving on. Now, who knows what an attribute is? Anybody like to take a guess? What does it mean? What does it define? Anyone?
Just defines the particular object. It's the grid reference, if you like, or the size, color. Yep,
exactly that. Now, you'll see here that I've got a raster map of Consett loaded. Okay, this is a fairly modern one. It's actually the OS vector map, open data vector map, map that's free to download from Ordnance Survey. No old maps today, unfortunately, but you'll see soon why this pertains to what we're doing as well. Because it's raster, it's just dummy. If I expand this here, you'll see that everything's made up of standard image tiles. And if I open one of those image tiles and go to the properties, there's basically not an awful lot there. You know, tells you its bounding box, what type it is, the size of the tile, how it's compressed, the name, what its EPSG code is. There's not really any symbology on it. There's some band colors, if you like, that sort of to show you basically what colors are used in the image. You know, you can make it transparent. It's color stuff. You know, it's just stuff that people dealing with bitmap and raster graphics would be used to dealing with. Those of you who've done Photoshop, for example, may be familiar with similar sorts of principles, what color the pixels are, histograms and things like that. The point I'm trying to make here is, other than the obvious name of the tile, which is in this case part of the grid reference, and the size and the fact that we can visually see that it's centered roughly on the area of interest, there's not an awful lot of other information in that. We know, for example, that we have Consett Road here because that's written on it. But if you were from outside the area and you just saw this green line down here and that wasn't written on it, would you know that it was Consett Road? Not really. Now, you can attach attributes to raster data, but attributes become much more useful when you start attaching them to vector data. Now, as you know, most of what we're doing with this project is taking the old maps and digitizing the older maps into vector-based maps. And we could, for example, as you've seen me do many times already now, create a temporary polygon layer.
Yeah.
What?
That's to me.
We can create a temporary polygon layer. Sorry, I couldn't resist that. And that's gone in completely the wrong place. I want it up there, thank you. And we can edit into that. And just as we've done all the times, let's draw around Tesco here. Nothing fancy. We're just going to do a very quick, very rough shape. Just like that. Now, if I open this up and go to its menu, you'll see we've got something here called Open Attribute Table. If I open this, we'll get this screen up. Now, right now, because this is a brand new element, a brand new shape, a brand new file dataset, if you like, it has no attributes. I haven't added any attributes to it. Yeah. Let's just pop that closed for a second. And if we go into its normal properties here, sorry, if we go into the normal, the normal properties, sorry, I'll get my head out my ass in a minute. We should find that we have a fields item. And this fields item allows us to add attributes to our object. So you've got a new field. We'll click and we'll call this name. Name of the object. And we'll make this a text string because we're going to type some text into it. We'll click OK. Yep. Now, right now, we apply that. We'll OK. We should now be able to right click on this again. And this time when we open the attribute table, we'll see that we've got a column called name. Yeah. So we'll put into there Tesco's. Right. Now, when we save this, that data will be saved with the shape that we've just drawn. So, for example, if we now wanted to go around our map and create some more objects, let's say we'll go over to here and we'll draw one around Morrison's. So you can see there that there's only the one row in at the moment. I'll add another object and we'll say Morrison's. Now this time, you'll notice that when I complete the shape, it pops a dialog box up. And that dialog box is exactly what you expect it to be. It's now saying, aha, you've got data that goes with this shape. Can you tell me what data you would like to add to it? So in this case, we can add Morrison's. And now when you look at your attribute table, you'll see that we indeed have two objects, one called Tesco's and one called Morrison's. Now, attributes don't have to just hold text. They can hold numbers and all sorts of stuff. And you can also calculate things with them. So, for example, let's just push this off screen a moment. Let's go back into our properties for that layer. into our fields, and we'll add a new field, and we'll say colour. The colour of the object. There's not really anything in there other than text string that would suitably describe that, so we'll make that a text string. And we'll OK that. What we can do now is we can go back in here. Now we know that Tesco's colours are blue and red, so we'll say blue. And we know Morrison's are yellow and green, so we'll put yellow in there. And what we can now do is we can use those attributes in different ways. So, for example, if we go into our layer now, and into the layer properties, and go to our symbology, style this, we can, when I find the right place, we should be able to use that field. Except obviously I'm doing something wrong here. Wait a minute, here we go. There's our colour, there we go. So in our colour editor for our simple fill, you'll see we have this weird looking menu at the end here. If we drag this down, we'll see that we can use a variable, an expression and various other types, or we can use a field type string. So you remember that we had colour there. If we do that and OK it, you should now see that we have a yellow and a blue. And because this is now on our attribute table, we can actually change that. It will quite easily, or we should be able to. So we'll change that to green. There we go. And we'll change that to red. So you should be able to start seeing the advantages, particularly of doing this kind of thing, because what it then means is if you've got a particular type of geometry, you can classify that geometry in different ways. And the Ordnance Survey use this to great effect. You'll notice that in my layers here, I have OP road, GB, road links and road nodes. Well, this is the Ordnance Survey Open Roads dataset. The Open Roads dataset is a free dataset, again, like the raster tiles that I'm using in the background, that can be downloaded from Ordnance Survey's open data portal free of charge. If I turn on the road link, you'll see that we get all these very faint green lines on. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the styles, I think, and pick a better colour for this, something that stands out a bit more. That good enough? Yeah, we'll go with that for now. Now, if we actually open the attribute table for that, you'll find that there is a surprising number of attributes. Because of the sheer amount of data in this data set, this is the 2.5 gig one that I mentioned when we first started. Because of the sheer amount of data in this, I preloaded the attribute table before I actually went on air. And there you go. This is what the Ordnance Survey Open Roads attribute table looks like. You can see that the Ordnance Survey have gone to great pains to describe just about everything that they think is worth describing to do with that segment of road. You have an ID. This is the actual Ordnance Survey ID. So if, for example, you were phoning up the Ordnance Survey to report an inaccuracy in the map and they wanted to know which road it was, you could quote that ID to them and they would know that it was that segment of road. We also have here what's called a start node and an end node. Now, I'll come back to those in a moment, but it's exactly as the name might suggest. Node, i.e. they are items of information that join the ends of the road. The road number TOID and the road name TOID, these are the old way the Ordnance Survey used to reference roads. And then we also have a fictitious column. Now, many of you may not realise, but in the UK, we do have a number of fictitious roads. And they're used primarily for TV programmes and things like that. And the Ordnance Survey do have physical roads. I can't remember where it is. I think it's down in Dorset somewhere. There is a 4.5 mile stretch of dual carriageway, which is used primarily by most of the film companies to shoot motorway scenes, such as large accidents for things like Casualty. And those of you who watched Cobra, the incident there where they were trying to get the big transformer up to the north to get power back on at the north was filmed there as well. And that is listed in this database with a false tag. We also have things like road classification, the function of the road, whether it's single or double carriageway, how long it is, length in meters, whether it's a loop road, and various other items like that. And that's decided to crash, so great. Yes, I was kind of hoping, oh, hang on, no, it likes me again. Right, okay, fine. So we will presume, I was just about to skip it there as well and reboot it. So all of this kind of comes in a bit handy, because if we now go into our properties, now just as I did before with changing the color, we can also have different types of styling. At the moment, this is a single symbol, and a single symbol is exactly as the name suggests. It's a single symbol that covers every single type, every single bit of geometry that's drawn in that data set, right? If, however, we change this, we've got a number of different ones here. We have things like categorized, graduated, rule-based. We'll cover graduated and rule-based some other time, but for now, if we change this to categorized, you'll see that we get a mostly blank dialog box. But this value box here at the top, if we drop it down, we'll see that we have all of our different items from the attribute data set listed in there. So for example, our road classification, if we select that and then tell QGis to classify it, and give it a moment, it might take a little while. Oh, there we go. You'll actually see that it says, well, you know what? I've gone through that attribute in your data set and I've examined the values, and these are the values that you have. So what we can now do is we can use that to our advantage. So an A road, for example, in true blue Peter style, I should already have a symbol for this. There we go. If I select A road, likewise B road, and motorway at an outset. I do have the others as well, but I don't know if I've matched the classifications up. So motorway, classified unnumbered, so that's probably going to be a minor road. And then not classified is probably going to be a standard local road. that should be okay for now, I think. We'll go with that for the moment anyway. Now, if I apply that, you'll see straight away that a lot of these have just changed now. But more's the point, you can see that different parts of the road network now have different stylings, depending on what type of road it is. I know for a fact that the bypass, the 692, is an A road. I know that the top end of Delves Lane going across the crossroads in Consett Town Centre there is a B road. And those of you who know John Street going around by the post office is also a B road. You'll see that you've actually got the entire B road one-way system going down to Shotley Bridge and Black Hill on there. B6322, the label underneath gives it away. You can also store things like road widths, for example. I mean, we're not going to go into that depth here. And we can make it so that those black lines appear under all the different coloured layers as well, so you don't see the end caps overlaid over each other like that. There's also other things that you can do with these as well. For example, if I use my info tool here and select a piece of road, you'll see that we just get the standard dialogue here that basically tells us the information on that thing. But we can add things like conversions on here. So say you're a person who prefers to work in feet and inches, we could take this length in meters value there, the length and the meters value, and we could put what's called a virtual property on here that would automatically get converted to feet and inches, things like that. More importantly, however, if we were now to add an extra item of road to that, let's say Durham County Council suddenly decided to build a road across here. So we'll give them a helping hand. We'll put it into edit mode. And we'll draw our new road across to there. It should. It's thinking about it. I wish it would do more doing and less thinking. There we go. It should give me this dialog box inviting me to enter the numbers. Now I'm going to auto-generate that. These ones that are in orange, I don't know. Or is it those I can change and the other ones I can't? Something like that. I can't remember that one. So we'll just give it a try. But the point is, we can actually fill our values in here. And hopefully, you'll see that that button's not going to highlight until I've filled that form in satisfactorily. I'm not going to do that because I don't know exactly which values it will and won't accept there, and we could be faffing on for like 5 or 10 minutes doing that. But you'll see that by putting the classifications in, by putting the right data into your form and by specifying the right attributes against the things that you're creating, you can make it automatically take this stuff on. So what you could in actual fact do is you could set this map up in QGis, save all the files, then make those files and projects available via a database server or via separate shape files, hand them off to somebody and then say, right, draw stuff. And then that person would automatically get a very, very good user experience. In fact, with QGis, you can even go so far as to remove all of these tools, all these menus, all these layer palettes and that, so that all you've got is a map drawing surface and then a dialog box that pops up when somebody draws something. To customize the forms, which you can do, you can also set the field types. So let's go back to, let's turn that road one off for a moment. Let's go back to our temp polygon, for example, here. And into its properties. You remember the fields and that we've got there. If you go below this, you'll see we have an attributes form. And within this attributes form, our standard stuff is listed. Now, for example, our color, we can change this. We can make this work in a different way. Instead of just having to type a color in, you can make it so that it becomes easier for the person to choose that. So we can give that a nice label. That is more English than just saying, give me a color. And we can put that on the attribute table. And then we can drop down this widget type here. And we have a number of different widgets to select from. So for example, we pick color for that one. We can have constraints. Constraints mean that you are forcing people who are using this map that you set up for them to put certain values in. So say, for example, you had a list of staff from the Steelworks and you know which buildings they were in, and you were creating a map of where certain members of staff were for a certain shift at a certain given time. You could then say, right, pull this data in from a database, and you can only select from this list of people. Yeah. So you can force data accuracy. You can force things to be known correct values and prevent bad data being entered. If you want, you can put a default value in. Now, a lot of this stuff, especially things like the not null and unique, might seem a little bit odd, but when you stop to think that a lot of these attributes and things are generally stored within a database, they suddenly do start to make sense, because not null is nomenclature for a database that says you're not allowed to have an empty database field here. Unique is exactly as it says. It's nomenclature for a database that says the database is going to check this to make sure that there's only one of this value in it, and if there isn't, it'll throw an error. Now, if we apply that and we OK it, now let's go and draw B and Q in. So just on here, we'll do this. Now this time when we finish, you'll see that we don't have a text box to type our color into. In fact, what we actually have is a drop down, and more's the point, it's got that nice piece of text. It doesn't just say color, expecting you to know, well, color of what? It's actually telling you what it's asking you. If I drop this down, we get a very nice color picker now. So let's pick orange, because that's the primary color for B and Q. And there we go. So again, we've made it very, very easy. And it doesn't stop there. I mean, I'm using colors as an example. We could, for example, go into the fields and say date opened, or date opened, sorry. The date we opened, and we can change this to a date string. And then on our attributes form, which we have to save it first, don't we? Yes, otherwise it won't show. Okay. There we go. So you can see that that's now appeared on there now. So it's on our attributes list. So if we go back in and edit the fields now, we can now change this in the same manner that we did the cool. In fact, because we've selected a given data type this time, it's actually had the intelligence to say, you want a date time picker. So it's automatically selected that particular type of widget for us. And it's given us the option to format it as well. We all know how those Americans, for example, like to format the dates back to front. If we apply that, we can now, or we should now, be able to edit this. There we go. You can see that I can go and pick. I get a nice experience. I don't have to guess any of the values. I get it right and in the same format every time. And likewise, when I add a new one, I think that's McDonald's. Again, we get the same here. We'll make that. Okay, it clashes with Tesco, but who cares? So you get the idea that you understand now that we can attach just about anything we want to these. You know? I could actually sit here all night and go through the types of things that attributes could be used for. Line thicknesses, road thicknesses, dates, times, all that kind of thing. But I haven't got all night. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to show you one other place where attributes come in really, really useful. And that's for labeling your map. Now you notice that this stretch of road here on the raster's got Consett Road written on it. So what about if you wanted to actually label each of these? If we go back into our properties for the layer and up to our labels section, you'll see at the moment it's got no labels on it. But again, as with the single and the categorized stuff that we showed on the symbology tab, you can pick rule-based, you can pick single labels. And if we pick single labels, we can again get this value, get this box, get this drop down. Yeah. If we pick name, we'll give it a buffer so that it stands out. I don't know. I'm feeling particularly eyeball hurting at the moment, so we'll give it a horrible green color like that. And we'll place it around the centroid. And you can see there we have Tesco's, Morrison's, but we didn't put a label in on them. Why didn't we put a label in on there? That's a very good question. Okay. We better put one in then. So we'll say, I have no idea why that didn't actually ask me to fill those ones in. Maybe it did, I just didn't notice it and dismissed it. No, sorry, that's McDonald's, isn't it? And that one is B and Q. Oh, have I got them the wrong way around? No, I've got them the right way around. I'm not entirely sure why those weren't saved, but there we go. So you see that you can get your labels in there. And you can go further than this as well. Let's say Tesco's was a more important building than Morrison's. You could say add a number in there and have that number be used against the font size. You'll find that on pretty much all of these dialogues, when you're setting styles and things, you will either see this menu, which allows you to pick your field types or set up a variable or some other combination of them, or you will see something like this little E symbol here, which means create a formula. Now, when you get, sorry, an expression, my mistake. We'll come back to the expressions in a moment. However, wherever you see that, you can take something from your database and you can use it in pretty much any creative way you want. Yeah. Robert, it was you that was doing the contours for the Land of Oak and Steel?
Jeff actually did them, but yeah, it's the Land of Oak and Iron we're doing contours, or we've done the contours.
Yeah, so if you've looked at many contour maps, you'll quite often see that some of them are generally thicker than others. You know, they're called your major contour lines, and then you'll have thinner minor contour lines in between that. And the way they do them is they use expressions. They basically say that they put a mathematical expression in, for example, that states if this contour line is 100 meters away from the last contour line, make it thicker, otherwise make it thinner. So you have operations like that as well. You know, you're not just restricted to saying, here's a value, use it. You can say, take a value and divide it by 2. Take a value, multiply it by another value, that kind of thing. And next week, I'm actually planning on covering some of the 3D functionality, not next week, next month, sorry. I'm planning on covering some of the 3D functionality that's available in QGis. And you'll see then how we can use that to say, this is the height of a building, or this particular building has a gap underneath it, so it's raised off the ground rather than being flat on the surface, that kind of thing. The other place where you're going to come across these expressions is actually in your attribute table. Now, I'm not going to try and do this on the open road one because we'll be sitting here for ages, yeah? But say we had a couple of 100 entries in this buildings table here. We can actually use this and we can say, right, we want a field. So we're going to say, if our color equals red, then we select it. So we can OK that. And that hasn't worked, or has it? No, it hasn't quite worked. Why didn't that work? Why didn't that work? Why didn't that work? Okay, so what that should have, oh, okay, I see why that. Sorry, I wasn't in select mode, I was in edit mode. So what I've actually done is I've edited only those things that have color red, I think, or I've screwed that up somewhere. Sorry, this is the one that I should have selected here. So we'll try that again. Fields and values, so color equals, we don't want 2 of them. And then red, select features, close. And there you go. Now that's not actually a yellow color, that is actually selected. Yeah. So what we've done there is we've selected only the building footprints that have the word red as the color. And you might be wondering why that wasn't selected. Well, that wasn't selected because it doesn't actually say red. If you look at it, it's got FF7, F00 in, which is almost red, oh sorry, that one, which is almost red, but it's not red, it's not spelt red. So when you use this kind of formula type thing, everything, it's exact, it's an exact match, particularly if you use an equals. So equals red means it has to be red. That's the name it has to use. So you see there, for example, I clicked on that and I've inadvertently changed it because it gave me a color picker. That will actually not select now. if I was to try and select that, if I save those changes and then go and try that selection again, color equals, in fact, you'll see I don't even get red in there anymore. So I can't select red. I actually have to type that in by hand. There you go, no matching features round. So you need to be careful if you're doing functions. You need to be careful, particularly if you're working with text strings, and particularly if you're using things like the equals operator, because they do have to be an exact match. Of course, you don't only have the equals operator. If you go back here, you'll see you've got a number of different ones. And if you're feeling brave and you've got any software development experience, you can even use this macro editor here. So you can write rather complicated bits of code to calculate the things you want.
Is that where the Python comes into it? Because I can see the Python logo.
Yes, well, QGis is actually written in Python.
Right.
Yeah, it's written well, not entirely in Python. There is some C, C++ bits in the background, but the user interface and the user features are almost exclusively in Python. You know the plugins that you saw me installing not too long back, when I had the plugin manager up? Most of the plugins are written in Python. The dev kit for it's in Python, you know, and there is even a Python console somewhere, if I can remember where it is. So you can actually open the Python console and you sort of get a panel at the bottom of your screen here, just like these panels at the side, where you can type Python commands that act directly on the open maps that you've got open, you know. So if you know a bit of Python and you want to go and select everything from a data set and alter everything by 0.01 of a pixel without having to type it in repeatedly over and over again, you're perfectly free to do that.
Cool.
Just out of interest, Dave, for some reason you do actually strike me as a person who knows what Python is.
Yeah, well, I work with Python, C#, a lot of that, so.
Ah, well, cool. Somebody else I can hire if I need a developer then. So you get the general idea with this now anyway. It can be a bit scary, but what I would suggest you do, just have a play with it, you know? As well as the fields and the values, I mean, obviously here you can pick from anything that you've got in your map, anything that you've added into your attributes, you know. For example, Robert, say you suddenly realized that all your contours needed to be 10 meters higher. You can go and select them all and add 10 onto them. And you've got various mathematical operators here that you can use to do that with, you know. You can aggregate. So if you want to take an average across a set of values or median, things like that, I'm not going to pretend that I know exactly what all of these do. You know, if you want to count how many distinct values or values are missing, things like that, you can work with arrays. So you can take a set of things and turn them into one value, or one value and split them into a set of things, and all sorts of stuff like that. You've got your color functions here as well. So you can convert colors, you can change them to grayscale, all kinds of things. Conditionals, most of these, if you have any database experience, most of these are equivalent to the same things that you might use in a database. And the ones I'm actually looking for though, but they're eluding me at the moment, is there are specific GIS ones in here. There you go. Here in your geometry section. So things like area of a polygon, you know, you can work out the area. And you get all your help here as well. It tells you how to work it out, how to verify it, how to make sure that you've got the right values in there. You can take the bounds of an object. You can get the centroid, things like that. So these are all values that don't only come from the attributes that you add to your map objects themselves. They actually come from the stuff that you draw as well. Yeah. Your geometry itself, for example, or the string geometry, is your actual drawn object that you've added to your map. Length and string length are the length of your drawn object. And you'll find as well, you've got a lot of normal geometric operations in here. Buffer, for example, I saw a minute ago. There, buffer by M, you know. For those who don't know what buffering is, what it basically means is taking an object, typically a line, and then putting padding around that line to widen it out. Yeah, but it's not affecting the actual geometry. It's just putting some extra geometry around it. Typically, if you want to take a line and turn it into a polygon, for example, if you were drawing roads, you would probably use a buffer. Or if you were working out a catchment area for a river, you might draw the river as a line and then put a buffer around it to the average width of a river in a given area, that kind of thing. If you're working with things like height maps, contours, grayscale height maps, you've got raster stuff in here somewhere. Here we are, rasters. So you can take a raster value, you know, at a particular set of points. So you can say, right, wherever my piece of geometry crosses something on the raster, give me the value at that point. Now on a map like the raster that I've got behind at the moment, it will probably just be a color. But if you had something like the OS Terraform 50 product in, then you would actually have the height in meters of the terrain at that point. So you can pretty much see just how powerful this system is. You don't have to sit and add all this stuff yourself, you know? And it also comes in, it's also used to link tables as well. So just briefly before we finish up, I said I'd come back to that road node thing. Now, hopefully this has come back to life. Yes, it has. So you'll see we have an end node and a start node there. Yeah. Now, if I just get that out the road for a moment and turn the road links back on, I'm going to turn this styling off for now, just so that it doesn't get in our road. So we're just going to change the symbology on that back to single symbol, and we'll make it, okay, it's all going to be that thick. Like, never mind. We'll just keep it all like that. It works for the purposes of what we're doing. And we will select just one piece of road. So this bit here. Yeah. So now we've got that bit of road selected there. If we go into our attribute table, you'll see we've got a drop down here at the bottom called show all features. We can change that to just show selected features. And there you go. That is actually the piece of road that I've got selected. And you can see that it has an end node and a start node of these numbers. Now, the more astute amongst you may have noticed that I actually have a layer here called road nodes. And if I turn that on, hopefully it won't take too long to render this. There should be, possibly can't see them because of the thickness of the lines that I've got. So let's put the road underneath that. There we go. You can see that we've got these nodes at the end. And those nodes, if we were to select one of them, Okay, it's not having any of it, is it? Oh, is it? Maybe. It's a big data set, so it's not the fastest of things. There we go. You'll see that that ID there will match one of those IDs there, or it should do. So 7423, there we go. So that's actually the start node. Now, having the start node and the end node can be beneficial in one way that you might not have realized, because I can tell which direction that road was drawn in. And because I know that that's the start node, that stands that that has to be the end node. Whoever drew this piece of road originally clicked there and then clicked there to finish it. So just by having linked data like that, I can tell the primary direction of that road. But this comes in even more handy, not just because of the fact that we can draw the maps and we can use that to ascertain extra information that our eyes can't tell us. This comes in handy for things like GPS systems. A lot of the data that I draw for the Consett Steelworks site, as you know, I can export to KML. And if I export it to KML, I can actually drop it in to Google Earth running on my tablet. I've got an Android, I've got a Fire HD here, and that has GPS on it. And when I go walking around down behind Genesis Way, down on the old company site, and I have the GPS turned on, my tablet can track the GPS into and around these bits of geometry that I've drawn on the map. And that's how I'm able to actually walk down any of those roads on the old Consett site and say, with pretty much 100% certainty, I am standing now where the blast furnace used to be. I'm standing now where water tank 127 used to be. I'm standing where a little shed that held the plate layers tools used to be. That kind of thing. Yeah? And that's because I can link things like this. I can take this data, I can put it into a system. Dave, for example, could take this data, he could put it into a system with a GPS on, and he could have it track the map in real time while a car's being driven. You know, he could use Python to read those attributes and the direction those attributes are in, and use that to know how far along a line he is. So you could, for example, say that's 0 meters, that's 100 meters, for argument's sake. My car is there. I know that I'm 500 meters away from the roundabout. And I can then do a calculation that makes my system turn around to whoever's using that map and say, in 50 meters, you need to turn right. And this is exactly how GPS systems work. They take all these little attributes, they take all these bits of data that somebody sitting drawing these maps has added to them, and then they provide extra features on top of that. They use the calculations that you define in QGis. They use the formulas that you define in QGis. And to a lesser extent, sometimes even the coloring and the symbology. And then they use that data to give you more information than you would otherwise be able to tell just by looking at the map normally. When you look at the steel map that I'm on creating, so let me just minimize this and grab another browser window. And we'll go to our map here. When you look at the map that I've been drawing, and the one that we'll all eventually be working on, if I turn on the company buildings layer, and I then move over to one of these orange blobs, you'll see that my pointer changes. See how there it's just a normal hand, and if I click, I can drag. But when I move over there, it turns into a little finger. If I click that now, assuming my code's working, which it doesn't appear to be. Yeah, I've obviously got a problem there somewhere. Don't laugh, Dave, I can hear you. try it with one of these. Okay, obviously I've got a bug somewhere. This is still in development, so you can't fault me for that one. But I did have it working. When you actually click the finger on one of these blobs, it pops up a little window that tells you the name of that building. In the case of the works here, because I only have the large scale view, I don't know where the cogging shops and all that were. I click on this, it's number 1 plant. I click on that, it's the company offices. I click on that, it's number 2 plant. But it's still the same thing. All of this data, as well as the drawing, as well as the orange footprints, when I tick that layer on, they were drawn in QGis, but the data that sits behind them, that describes them, was also added in QGis. The attributes were defined in QGis. The functions, the mathematics were all done in QGis, all to drive this. And eventually, when we start doing this and putting things like photographs on there, we'll extract the information from photographs. You know, the location where the photographer was, which direction they were facing, how high on the land, what the width of the lens was, things like that, you know. A lot of people don't realize, but when you take many of the photographs that you take, when you take them, generally have embedded information in them. So if we open this, for example, and then move out to the side, that's probably a scanned one because there's nothing in there. But we will eventually, I hope anyway. Actually, I know where to look. One of these. So that's the old signage just around the corner from Generation Place before they pulled it down last year. And you'll see here, I have things like the model of the camera that was used. In this case, it was my phone. So that's because I've got a Sony CS503. But you'll see the date and time it was taken. Obviously, I didn't have the GPS switched on at the time, but that would have had a GPS location on. And all of that information, if you can actually drag these photographs into QGis, and this information can be extracted in QGis, and it can be combined with the stuff that you draw. And you can do all of those operations that you do with regular attributes on that data. And that's largely it for today's session, basically. So, any questions, anyone? No? Okay then. Well,
everyone's happy, Peter.
Hey?
Everyone's happy by the sounds of it.
Yeah, they are, aren't they? So,
if anybody struggles to get the download, please just get in touch with me and I'll make sure you get a copy, one way or another, by email or whatever. You can certainly do that.
And if that link you've just put on the chat is working.
Excellent. Okay, so people can use that. That's brilliant.
oh, there we go. Then you can just go and grab it from there.
So,
Yeah, it's in the chat.
excellent. That's working. That's good. So thank you for all coming again. And we'll see you roughly this time next month. I'll have to look at what the dates are for next month, but I'll let you know.
Well, I do believe we might not be able to do it the 20th. I'll need to check my calendar and get back to you on that one, Richard, because
Okay.
I'm actually doing a session for .NET Knots, .NET coding group down in Nottingham.
Right.
Doing an IoT session on how to build your own USB devices and power them using .NET. So
Yeah, we'll have a confab, Peter, and work out a date, and then we can let people know.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you've got any questions afterwards, if you go away and think, oh, we should ask that, please do get in touch with Peter or drop a message into the into the group, and Peter will pick that up. So
Well, as most of you know now, I'm an admin in the group, so you know, you can get in touch with me just through the normal Consett History of Consett Steelworks admin channel as well.
absolutely. Anybody got anything else to mention at all? No, I think we'll bid everybody a good evening then.